recording. All right, and actually, let me see. Well, hello everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It's so wonderful to be with you guys. I'm so excited because I'm going to be introducing to you guys one of the most influential people in my life, someone who has influenced my life greatly. You guys have already met one of my teachers, Aftab Uncle, who has also influenced my life greatly. I would say there are three men that have really influenced my life. One of them gave birth to me. That was my father. He was responsible for my birth. And then two teachers. One was Aftab Uncle and one, of course, Chris Attwood, my dear friend and longtime mentor, Chris Attwood. And I'm going to be introducing him to you guys in just a minute. I've been talking to Chris about this adventure that I've been having in Pakistan and all the things that he's taught me that I am sharing with you. So whatever words or pearls of wisdom you hear coming out of my mouth, most of it was taught to me by Chris. So I'm super excited to introduce him to you guys today. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. This talk is entirely going to be in English. So as I mentioned in the promotion, that is a prerequisite. You will need to be able to understand English in order to understand this talk. And if you have any questions, for example, if you need further clarification on something that we say, please put that in your comments and I will be reviewing those from time to time. And if we have time, we will expand on that a little bit further. Also, you're going to hear some pretty unusual things today, sometimes out of my mouth, sometimes out of Chris's mouth. So if that is something you like, or you have one of those epiphanies or an aha moment or a light bulb goes off, please make sure that you put that in your comments too, because that kind of helps me to know what it is that you're connecting with, what you're resonating with, and that helps me to get content for future talks as well. So I want to welcome my long-term friend, mentor, and so much more, Chris Attwood, to the show. Welcome, Chris. It's so awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much, Eram.
I'm going to read your bio really quickly because many people in Pakistan don't know much about you. So I want to make sure that they know the visionary and the wisdom keeper that they're talking to today, or they're listening to today. So Chris Attwood is a leading figure in the transformational world and a master of creating enlightened alliances. He is co-author of 2 New York Times best-selling books, The Passion Test and Your Hidden Riches, with his business partner and ex-wife, Janet Bray Attwood. He built a global brand with over 3,500 passion test facilitators in more than 65 countries. Chris has created some of the major strategic alliances in the transformational industry, including his key role in arranging 70% of the interviews for the book and movie phenomena, The Secret. I know Pakistan is just discovering The Secret or the Law of Attraction. So this might be a surprise for you guys that Chris was actually the mentor for Rhonda Byrne as well in writing her book. So Chris is a founding member of the Transformational Leadership Council, also known as TLC, created by Jack Canfield. Over the past 30 years, Chris has been CEO or senior executive of more than a dozen companies. After resigning as president of a government securities dealer in the early 1980s, Chris took 10 years for his own inner development, spending 8 to 10 years a day in deep meditation. He's had a regular meditation practice for daily practice, actually, for more than 45 years.
Wait, and you know that means that I'm 47 right now. But
yes, you were only 2 years old when you started meditating.
And can I say one thing? Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say one of the most important aspects that is not included in your bio is that you have been the personal mentor of Eram Said for now, 6 years?
Yeah, going on 7. That's right.
Going on 7.
And the other thing that's not in my bio that may be relevant to this conversation is that I have been now happily married for 15 years. I have 3 beautiful children, ages 12, 9, and 6. And Janet, who you mentioned in my bio, my ex-wife from 25 years ago, Janet is the godmother of our children because she's still a dear, dear friend and considered a part of our family as well.
Yes. And I've met your entire family, and I have met Janet, whom I adore and love, as I adore and love your wife, Joe, as well. A beautiful, adorable family. And that is one of the strangest phenomenon for people to actually witness is how loving everybody is, including your ex-wife there, and how caring, how deeply caring she is about your entire family. And she's very, very close friends with Joe. So I want to talk about some of that in a little bit, because as I shared with you, you kind of watched this phenomena take place here in Pakistan when I arrived, and I told you, well, I'm just going to make some videos, and then they went viral, and now it's just, I don't know what's happening, and it's taking a life of its own. And as I said to you, this is divine will, so I'm submitted. I'm going to be a vehicle through which the divine delivers his will. But the first video that went viral, which told me that this seems to be a really big issue that people are confused about here in Pakistan, was the video on marriages. And this was a video about, why are you getting married? That was the title, which I kind of, because I saw that in our culture, even when I was growing up, but more so now, people are so focused on things like, we mostly have arranged marriages, Chris. So
Yeah.
when the girl's family is looking for a guy, they're going to be looking for stature, what kind of, social stature they have, how much money does the guy have, what kind of degree does he have, what kind of career does he have, and they're doing that thinking that this is for the future and the security of their daughter, which makes sense. It seems logical. And
Yeah.
then when the girl's family is looking for a guy, they're going to be looking. I'm sorry, when the boy's family is looking for the girl, they're going to be primarily looking for a very beautiful girl, and also some of the similar things like social stature and money and all those things. Yet you and I know that none of these things contribute towards a happy marriage. And that's why I titled it, Why Are You Getting Married? Or why are you getting your children married? What is the ultimate purpose? Isn't it so that the couple could be happy, they could lead a happy life, they could, for in the foreseeable future have a balanced life, have children, and be able to raise balanced children, and hopefully not end up in a divorce. Yet none of the things that people pay so much attention to contribute towards those things. That, a beautiful girl is not gonna, it's not, a sure shot thing that she's gonna actually be a great wife. A man who makes a lot of money or has a great education, as in a degree from college, is not necessarily going to be emotionally mature even to have a good relationship. That's kind of the point I was trying to raise, which was missed by a lot of people. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit. I know you're going to comment mostly, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
comments on
Huh. Thanks. First of all, I want to say what an honor it is to be able to talk with you about these things. We've been talking for years and years about similar topics. It's nice to be able to do it in the context that maybe others can benefit as well. So thank you for that. And I have a question before I respond, Eram. I have a question that in the Islamic tradition in Pakistan, is there a mechanism or a means for being able to evaluate the compatibility of the proposed bride and groom?
Well, what from my limited knowledge, what Islam proposes is to look at values, look at the character,
Okay.
that for both men and women, that you should look at their social values. How much integrity do they have? The, honesty. As a Momin, as a Muslim, it is expected of Muslims to be, devout in their prayers, for example, to take
Yeah.
care of the poor, to take care of the orphans, to not lie, to be honest. So that's
Yeah.
already expected. So that's one of the things you want to see is, do they have all of the prerequisites that Islam considers to be mandatory in a man and a woman?
Yes.
And then if you must judge, if you must compare, let's say you have multiple choices, then primarily that's what you're supposed to look at when comparing. I shared with you, Chris, because we've had so many interesting talks. Guys, I want to tell you that Chris is not a Muslim, but a lot of stuff that he's going to talk about, you will be scratching your head and saying, well, he talks about a lot of Islam and he knows about Islam and he believes in a lot of things that are Islamic. And that's because he's very spiritual. And we've discussed this many times, that when you get to those higher echelons of spirituality, to the highest truth, whether you're talking about the Hindu spirituality or the Buddhist spirituality or Sufism or whatever it is, most of them on majority of topics are going to agree, because the truth with the capital T, the highest truth, is the same. That is God. So we've discussed many things, and so Chris and I have had many interesting discussions on the parallels between what he believes in and what Islam says, and the wisdom of Quran and the wisdom of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life. And one of the things I mentioned to you, Chris, was that, you know, somebody asked the Holy Prophet that, you know, if I have a proposal for my daughter who is a non-Muslim, and then there's a Muslim man, how can I decide? It was something along that context. And the Prophet said, if there is a slave who is not yet free and he's a Muslim man, he is better for your daughter than to marry a non-Muslim. And what I always say to people, especially living in America, because you know the American Pakistani families have a lot of issues when finding the right mate for their daughters. What I say is, it's not just someone who is, you know, he just says La ilaha illallah, that, you know, I'm a Muslim. It's because of those attributes that the Prophet talked about, that Islam makes mandatory for a Muslim man, because he's going to be kind, he's going to be fair, he's going to be honest, he's going to have, it's all a prerequisite of being a good Muslim. So that's why, even if he's a slave, meaning he may not have the financial wealth, he may not have the financial standing, but he's still going to be a better mate for your daughter, because he's going to be able to keep the balance, and he's going to keep her happy, and he's going to be able to raise children that are balanced and that are happy. So that was a very long answer to your question. Sorry.
No, but it's really valuable. And one other thing I'd like to clarify is that you've shared with me that one of the highest values that the Prophet, as I understood, one of the highest values that the Prophet placed emphasis on was the value of truth and integrity. And could you just share, to remind me and for those who are listening, the story that you told me about the Prophet's attitude toward telling lies?
Yes, that was a very beautiful saying of the Prophet, that somebody asked, one of his companions asked him, can a Muslim commit a sin? And he said, yes, a Muslim could commit a sin. And he said, well, can a Muslim, and I'm not going to be exact, I'm just kind of summarizing what he said, but he went over some, sins or wrongdoings that are common, like can they commit theft? Can they hurt someone? Can they murder someone? What about adultery? And the Prophet said, yes, that could happen. And then he said, can a Muslim lie? And he said, no, can't. And that is a very profound, very strong hadith for me, because what that's telling us is that lying is so bad. It is such a foundational wrongdoing that messes up everything else that you do, because a person who lies will not have integrity. They will not be honest. They will have, some kind of shortcoming in so many areas of their lives. And I know what you're getting at. You're saying that, when you're selecting a mate for your daughter or for yourself, that's one of the things you need to find out. Do they lie? Or do they?
Are they a good Muslim? Really, what it comes down to is it that they're not just giving the lip service to being a Muslim, but is the husband or the wife, are they really good Muslims? Because in my experience, if you want to fix a marriage or if you want to create a great marriage, the most fundamental and important thing that you can do is to have shared values. Yeah, if the values that you live your life by are the same values that your partner lives their life by, then a lot of things can go wrong or can be disturbances on the surface, but they're not going to disturb that fundamental relationship that is established in the marriage.
Right.
And the reason I asked that question, Eram, is because, in the West, there is, I think the statistics are something like 50% of marriages end in divorce. And it's my understanding that in the East, in Pakistan and the surrounding countries, that the divorce rate is closer to is under 5%.
Mm-hmm. Um,
I don't know if that's true or not, but it's much lower.
Maybe
Yes?
it's a little
Or
bit
no?
higher now, but could
Okay.
be. It's
But
still
it's
very low
lower.
compared
It's
to
still
the West.
low.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet, what I hear, and please, Eram, you correct me, but what I hear is that in Pakistan, for example, there are marriages which are not functional, there are marriages, many marriages. The husband and wife may not get divorced because of pressures from family or from society, from social pressure. And yet the husband and wife live together without love, without care, without connection to each other. And that in many cases I don't know, I don't want to make a general expression, but there are cases where uh, the usually the husband, as I understand it, will look for uh, other relationships outside the marriage.
Yeah.
And to me, it's the same fundamental thing that you see divorce in America, and of course, you have just as much or maybe more challenges with people looking for relationships outside of marriage in the West as there is in the East. But the thing that tends to destroy marriages, destroys relationships, is when there's a lack of integrity, authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. You've heard me talk about this many times, that the two people after some years end up living together, but they really don't have a relationship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell each other, and I don't know, you can tell me how the prophet describes this, but from my perspective, it's as much a lie to omit something, to not tell something which is relevant or important to a relationship as it is to tell a non-truth.
Mm.
And and I don't know if the prophet defined lying as that, but there is what's called the omission of truth, which oftentimes can be as misleading as telling something which is false, right?
So I'm going to ask you here, Chris, because as you know, I've counseled a lot of men and women
Mhm.
while doing my research on this topic over the years. And what I hear from men, and I'm talking about men here in Pakistan, is that I can't tell my wife the truth because she can't handle it. She's
Yeah.
going to become too nagging. She becomes very suspicious.
Yes.
Uh, and there is this bit of a dichotomy here. There is this dynamic because women are still in the process of gaining their independence. They're still not quite, they don't have all their rights yet, so they're very dependent on their husband. So there is
Yes.
this sense of security, thereby a sense of fear, which is
Yes.
always attached to the
Yeah.
marriage, and controlling the husband, and controlling the outcome of what might happen in the future. And
Yeah.
they're justified. I mean, I can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
um, so everything that leads to undue freedom for the husband is very threatening. So in that situation, sometimes just to avoid drama, they might lie.
I understand. And it is natural for human beings to try to avoid pain. We all do
Mhm.
it, right? If there's a situation or a circumstance which is painful, I'm going to try and run away from it, escape it. I'm going to try to avoid it in any way that I can. And yet,
Mm.
what is the one phrase that you've heard me say over and over again over these last 7 years, Eram, that where does growth happen?
in the unknown, in
When
that
you
edge,
stand in what?
the fire of your discomfort. Yes, I remember.
That's right. And so our natural inclination is to run away from discomfort, to try to avoid discomfort, to try to escape it. And what do we end up with? We end up with relationships which are not intimate. We end up with relationships where a husband and wife go about their daily activities, but they're not truly connected at a deep level. And and as a result, such a marriage is not truly fulfilling. It doesn't give that
It's
sense
so-
of joy that marriages
yes.
are meant to give.
And you just said the magic word. It's intimacy.
Yeah.
People don't understand intimacy,
Mm.
you know, and that's what I tell people when they ask me, oh, marriage is always going to be a compromise. Majority of marriages are going to be compromises. You can't be happy in a long-term marriage. You're an example that that's not true. You can be
Yeah.
happy and still be madly in love and excited and
Yes.
attracted to your wife for all, even after all these years. And one of the most important elements that is there present is intimacy. So
That's right.
let's talk about intimacy, because when you and I were talking right before this call, we discussed that majority of people don't even understand love. Let's begin with that. Let's begin with the basic understanding of love, Chris, because I bet you majority of our listeners right now have a very incorrect understanding of what love is.
Sure. Uh, it's
So
one of
let's
my
talk about
favorite topics, right?
yes.
And before answering that, I just want to say, I think from my side, I think
Mhm.
arranged marriages done properly actually represent one of the wisest ways of creating a marriage. In the West, there's this idea of if you fall in love, then you'll marry your soulmate and then you'll live happily ever after. And yet we see that doesn't happen. It doesn't work. And it
Mhm.
doesn't work because the beginning of a relationship that is based upon attraction is a function of the chemicals in the body. The body starts to produce hormones and chemicals that cause us to feel this intense desire to be with this other person. And those chemicals go away after a period of time. They
Yeah.
go away after a
Mhm.
few years. Uh, and so if that's what the marriage or the relationship is based on, then it's going to fall apart, as most relationships in the West do. Uh, the what is required for a relationship to last is a relationship that is based upon love, which also means acceptance.
Mhm.
The attraction, the being in love concept is not true love. It's a
Mhm.
chemical reaction of the body caused by an interaction with someone that I feel some draw to, right? and
Mhm.
and it's very powerful. It's overwhelming, but it's not love. It's a chemical reaction. Love.
It's nature duping you into
Yeah. Well,
procreation.
and that's right. Why does it exist? Why do we have that reaction? Is because nature is our God. Allah has set things up so that we'll make babies and produce more offspring and continue the human race.
For the human race, yeah.
Right? That's why those chemicals get released, and that's what we call falling in love. But it's not love.
It's just the
Love,
brain on drugs of
love.
dopamine.
That's right. Exactly. It is drugs. It really is. It just happens to be drugs that are created by the body. What God, Allah, has given us is true love.
Mm.
And if we want to look for what love is, then we look to what are the descriptions of God's love, of Allah's love. And that love is a love without conditions. It is a love of full acceptance. It's a love of that is always present, always nurturing, always available. It's a love which also at times can be firm. It's a love which stands firmly in truth and which gives way to untruth, which falls away in the face of that which is opposed to God's will, to Allah's will.
Mm.
It's the love is that which true love is really that which always pulls one, myself and the object of my love, to God, to Allah, to live aligned with God's will, which
Mm-hmm.
means to live aligned with the laws of nature. And
So
that
let's
love,
talk about this in a more understandable romantic term. So
okay,
so if you love dough,
I do love
you
dough.
love dough, you love your wife.
Doe is my wife, for anyone who doesn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So because what I want to touch on now, a very important thing is how most people think of love, but what they actually have is an attachment.
Yes.
So so how would that look like in a married couple? They think they are in love. I mean, I can't tell you how many women I've counseled that are heartbroken. Yeah, this is a great example. So I'm going to give you a tough one, Chris. Ready?
Oh, goody.
All right. So so you know that Islam allows for a man to have more than one wife.
Yes.
And so I've counseled women whose husbands have disclosed to them that they have taken another wife, and they are now devastated. I mean, truly devastated. And so I'll tell you what I tell them, but first I want to ask you, what would you say to them? Because what they're saying is, I love him so much, I can't bear to share this love. I can't breathe, it hurts so much.
Yeah. So the woman who says that is not talking about love. She's talking about attachment.
Mm,
She is so attached to this man. So
mhm,
she is clinging so tightly to this man that she
mhm,
cannot bear to share him with another.
mm,
Love, attachment is based upon a feeling of lack. Okay.
mhm.
Attachment is based upon a feeling that I do not have enough within myself and I need something from outside to make me complete, to make me fulfilled, to make me happy. Okay.
Mhm,
The 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 nature of love is fullness.
mhm,
Love is not about attachment. Love is unconditional in its nature, which means that if the husband comes to the wife and says, "Honey, I have taken a second wife," then the wife who loves that husband will say, "Oh, my dear beloved husband, I'm so happy that you have this other person who can help make you happy, who can with me help fulfill your life and your loves and and to bring fulfillment to your life." Because if you really love someone, what do you want for them? Eram,
mhm.
well, let's take it out of husband and wife for a minute. For everyone listening, if you're a parent, what do you want for your children?
To be happy.
Yeah. And maybe you define happiness in terms that make sense to you, security and money and this and that and the other things, which may or may not actually make them happy. But what a parent wants for their children is that they should be happy. A wife or a husband, either way, it goes both ways. One who loves the other, what do they want? They want them to be happy, you know? And if there's some part of your life that feels incomplete, then why would I not want you to complete that portion of you? Why would I not
Well,
want you to be complete?
because we want people to be happy on our terms.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
will define to you what is going to make you happy, and then you're allowed to be happy within those boundaries, Chris.
That's right.
And then in return, I will love you.
That's right.
But
Exactly.
you better not stray out of these boundaries, because I
That's
get
right.
to define your boundaries.
Yeah,
And then what happens is you get to define my boundaries, and then we're all just controlling each other. We've
that's
got
right.
these codependent relationships. And by the way, this is not just between husband and wife. This is how pretty much we do with everybody. We
That's
do it
right.
with our children. Our It's so sad. I see a lot of children that, people are asking me, how do I raise better children? Please give me advice for my teenagers. And they don't know how many teenagers and children are contacting me saying, please talk some sense into my parents, they're driving me crazy, they have so many expectations.
Yeah,
And this is the truth. And I'm not blaming anybody here, because this is what we learned, so we're doing what we learned to be correct. But it's, we can shift that at any time once we do understand better. We have so many expectations from our children. We tell them, you have to get good grades, you have to be a good boy or a good girl, and then you have to do this, and then when they get married, we continue those expectations. Here in Pakistan, there's a lot of interference from the in-laws from both sides, and they define how the couple should be happy. And so love is always conditional, no matter where you see it. And unfortunately, uh, I know I'm treading on thin ice here, but the way religion has been taught to us um, is also a very conditional relationship with God. That if you do these good deeds, then Allah is going to love you. But if you do these bad deeds, He's going to punish you, and therefore He doesn't love you. And that's not true. God loves you no matter what.
That's
You
right.
are loved by God at every moment, at any moment. He knows you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. You're meant to make mistakes, and you're meant to go back to Him as long as you keep going back to Him. But you are loved in any given moment. You're loved. So we start this definition of love from the very beginning. It's so conditional, and then we take that into our marriages. And I'm just going to briefly tell this story. I've shared this with you because this was mind-boggling to me. I think I've been learning from you for so long, Chris. My way of thinking has changed so much that when I encounter previous way of thinking, it just is like, oh my God, wow, how can you think that way? So I shared this story with you when I was counseling this couple, and in this case, the husband came to me first because he actually had taken on a second wife in Dubai. And his wife was here in Pakistan of 25 years. And the gentleman had a very close, near that death experience. He had cancer and he had almost died. And before that, he just used to have affairs, and he had a relationship with this woman. And because he almost died, he said, it just made me think about life after death, and I'm not going to commit sin anymore. Therefore, I've taken her on as a second wife, and now I need your help to disclose this to my wife. So it's a done deal. So the wife had found this out as an affair, and she found out that he had been having this affair for 5 years. So I sat down with her and I asked her, how long have you been married? And she said, well, almost 28 years. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. And what kind of a husband has he been? And she said, he's been absolutely wonderful. He's been a great husband. He's a great father. I am not as good of a mother as he is a father. He's provided for everything. And I said, well, that's great. And she said, I was thinking, I nursed him through his cancer. And now I was thinking the children are older, and we're gonna have a nice retirement, and it's gonna be me and him. And then he tells me that he's been with this woman for 5 years, and he's been having this affair, and I will not stand for it. I want him to give this up, and da da da. I said, well, so when did you find out that he had been having an affair for 5 years? And she said, well, just recently. And I've lost my sleep. I can't eat. My blood pressure is through the roof. And I've been so unhappy. And I said, but the affair has been going on for 5 years. So how were you before you found out? And she said, well, I was fine. I was happy as could be. And I was this and I was that. And I was enjoying myself. And he used to go on these business trips, and I never suspected anything. I said, well, then do you see what's going on here? He's been with her for 5 years. You just found out. And since then, you've been so unhappy. So it's not his affair that is causing you so much pain. It's your knowledge and the story that you have attached to that knowledge that is causing you so much pain. Of course, that just went, she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's really the case. It's if it were the affair, then you would have been unhappy for the last 5 years. You would have said, he's been mistreating me, he's been ignoring me, but he didn't do any of that. He pretty much kept it on that even keel. And so anyway, so that was just mind-boggling to me, that this piece of information she just wasn't ready to accept. And the guy basically said, you can either take a divorce or accept that I've married this woman now. And that kind of, obviously there's only one ending to that. But But that's the problem, the attachment we have. Like she had these
But
plans.
I just want to make sure that everyone who's listening got what you just shared, Eram, because it's one of the most important principles that one can learn in a relationship. It's not the partner who makes me unhappy. It's my thinking that makes me unhappy. In your
Mhm.
story, it was not the husband that made the wife unhappy. It was not even his affair that made the wife unhappy. It was her thinking about the affair once she found out it was going on, right? So
Yes,
the only thing that changed was her thinking. Everything else was the same for 5 years, but what
yes,
changed was her thinking. And
yes,
this, and as you and I have talked about for lots of times, when you want to change your life, then the fundamental of it is to investigate your thinking, to
yes,
investigate your beliefs, to investigate your concepts. Because to come back to this point of what is it that represents real love? Real love means I want for you what you want for you. That's real love.
yes.
That's unconditional love. That's not I want for you what I want for you, right? I want for
Well,
you what you want for you. Hmm?
yes, and the thing is that we have these expectations. So, in defense of all the women that are probably going to be going like, "Oh God, Iram, we liked you, and now we're never going to follow your lead because we can't believe this is what you believe in." See, what I'm saying is, um, I posted something earlier, and a lot of people were disagreeing with that too, which was, it was Rumi's quote: "Why must you stay in prison when the door is so wide open?" Such a
Yes,
beautiful saying.
yes,
What imprisons us, what enslaves us? It's these desires, these attachments, these expectations, and the
yes,
attachments we have to those expectations. So this woman or any other woman who's been through this, a divorce or a death of a husband or an affair or a second marriage or whatever, you had an expectation of the future, you had a projection about the future, and we all do that. I mean, it's natural.
yes.
But whoever said that that is how it's going to happen for sure? I mean, it's our attachment to that outcome that when that doesn't happen, or when something opposite to that happens, we're not ready to accept it. And that's where suffering happens, right? It's painful. I get that. It's painful to find out that the man you trusted and loved has had an affair or has married another woman, whatever it is, or has died. It's painful. But why does suffering happen? And you and I have talked about this so many times. Suffering happens when you're saying that reality should be different than what it is.
Yeah, that's
And the
right.
truth is, reality should be exactly what it is. Why? Because it's happening. It would not have happened had it not been decreed by Allah. Had
That's
it
right.
not been God's will, it would not have happened.
That's right.
The fact that it is happening, you have to accept that first. The reality is that this has happened. Stop trying to say, oh, this should not have happened to me. Well, then what would you rather have happened to you? There's all kinds of things happening to people all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, what if this is what God knows that you can actually endure? Look
Well,
around you. There are people going through much, much harder stuff.
yeah. And Iram, I think, the fundamental point here is to understand what is marriage for? What is the purpose of marriage?
Yeah.
Many people think marriage is so that I can be secure, so that I can be happy, so I can have children, I can have a family, I can have a nice house, I can have, I can be well respected in society. Whatever the reasons are, that's not what marriage is for.
No.
Marriage, the Allah created marriage for our growth.
Hmm.
Relationships and marriages in particular are specifically the greatest tool that Allah has given us for our personal growth and expansion to be able to come into
And,
alignment
and
with His
define
will.
what you mean by growth, please.
Yeah.
Growth is getting
I,
closer to God.
so growth means to become into alignment with God's will, with the
That's
will of
right.
Allah. And because when we're aligned with the will of Allah, then life flows. Then life is smooth and easy. And the example that I like to give you've heard it before, Eram, is if you imagine that life is like a river, most people spend their life fighting against the current, trying to fight against life. They bang up against the sides of the river, against the banks. They get torn by the thorns and the brambles and all of that. And so their life is miserable. But when you're aligned with the will of Allah, with the will of God, then your life is as if you're floating in an inner tube down the middle of the river. You're just going with the flow of life, with the flow of God's will, Allah's will and intention for life. And when you're aligned with that will, then you told me at one time, Iram, that there's this saying that a true devotee of Allah is a slave of Allah. Yeah. And what does it mean to be a slave of Allah? You know, we tend to think we have all this bad connotation around slavery that, and in human terms, slavery of human beings is a terrible thing. But to be a slave of Allah, to be a slave of God, that's the greatest gift that anyone could be given,
Yeah,
because
it's true liberation.
yeah, it's true liberation. Because if you think about it, when I love when I love my wife, or my wife loves me unconditionally,
Hmm.
then it means that there is nothing that can disturb our relationship. There's nothing that can upset our relationship. This is freedom, right? This
Yeah.
is the ability to enjoy fulfillment in relationship, because my connection to my partner, to my husband, to my spouse, to my wife, is based upon my being grounded in the will of God, in the will of Allah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when I'm a slave of Allah, when I am really devoted to being to the will of God, then I know that there is nothing, as you just said, Iram, there is nothing that is not Allah. There is no experience that I can have which is not Allah, because Allah is omnipresent. God is omnipresent. God is all knowing. God is always conducting and guiding and directing every aspect of my life, every aspect of my experience. And so why does Allah create experiences which are painful? Because all that Allah loves us so much that he wants nothing to keep us separate from him. Nothing
Yes.
should keep us separate from him. And the things that cause us pain, the things that cause us to suffer, are the things that keep us separate from Allah, keep us separate from God.
And the pain is basically an invitation for us to take a deeper look. Why
That's
is
right.
this event causing me so much pain?
That's right.
And like what you've told me so many times, that you are always, and this is one of those things, you guys, if light bulbs go off for some of you, that would be great, because it took me a while to understand this. You are always and only in relationship with yourself. The other is merely an illusion or a reflection. So it takes
Well,
a while.
the only way you experience the other is through the thoughts in your mind. You
Yes.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, even if you hold your beloved in your arms, your experience of your beloved is based upon a sensation that is processed by your brain. Okay.
Yes.
And so it's only the only way we experience anything in this world is through the processing of our awareness, of our mind.
Yes.
And thus we think that the world out here is doing something to me. But what's doing something to me, if I feel something is being done, is the thoughts I'm having about my experience in the life, in the world.
Yes.
Are we, does that make any
Uh,
sense?
yes. I'm just. Somebody's saying they want to meet you, Chris.
Well,
Well, Chris was in Pakistan in last November. Chris, last November,
no, in
right?
February,
2019.
in
Were you
February,
here in February? Oh yeah. So I
right,
moved here.
right before the whole coronavirus thing came
Yes.
out.
So I moved here in October, and Chris loves me and my daughters so much that he came to stay here and visit with us. And he wanted to meet Aftab uncle and my father. So we had him here for 3 days. So hopefully after the pandemic, we're gonna request for you to come back.
I would
Chris
love
loves
that.
Pakistan, by the way. He's been to India many times, but this was his first time to Pakistan. And so yeah, hopefully we'll have him soon after the pandemic.
Yes.
Um, gosh, what was I thinking? Something very important. Yes, this thing that I've been saying in all of my videos again and again and again. And I told Chris, it was so funny. After I made some of my videos and I was watching them before they edited, and I'm like, Chris, I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. I sound so boring. And he said, well, my dear, that is called enlightenment. That when you get to the higher truth, ultimately truth is very simple, and you will keep coming back to the same thing again and again, because it is the truth.
Yeah.
So what
Yes.
do I say in most of my videos, you guys? I keep taking you back, whether it's about building confidence in yourself or in your children, whether it is not feeling lonely, whether it is how to create happiness, whatever the topic is, I keep going back to the same thing. Have a strong connection with God. It is so important. So what we were just talking about, relationships, marriages, why do you feel so much pain? Because you made your source of strength and happiness someone or something other than God.
And that is
Whenever you
called,
do
and
that,
that is called a false idol.
false God, a false
That's
God,
right. A
right?
false god. False
Yeah.
god. That's
So
right.
attachments, all attachments are false gods, and all false gods will lead to weakness.
That's right.
All of them.
And
And
unhappiness and misery. Yeah.
unhappiness and misery. And so that could be your spouse, your marriage, your career, your children, your stature, social stature, whatever that is, your parents. I mean, whatever that is going to lead to weakness, misery, and unhappiness. Now, as human beings, it's going to happen. I mean, no, it's going to be very difficult not to have attachments. I mean, you've done a lot of work on it, Chris, but other mere mortals like us that are still working on this stuff, we're going to have attachments.
Yeah.
And then when God wants to show us, and that's what Chris was saying just a few minutes ago, that Allah loves us so much. I always say to you guys, please try to understand the meaning of Rahman and Rahim. It is so beautiful. Rahman and Rahim together means someone who loves beyond measure, infinitely and intensely and immediately. It's like one of those beautiful words of Arabic that has such a vast meaning. So, in other words, love beyond which love is not possible. That's how
Yes.
much God loves us. That's
That's
how
right.
much Allah loves us. So, He loves us so much that He doesn't want to see any of those weaknesses inside us, because all these weaknesses are also illusions, and they separate us from God. They
That's
keep
right.
us separated from God. And God wants to remove, He wants to blast through those illusions so that you can feel the nearness of God. What does God say to us? God says, "Wahuwa ma'akum aynama kuntum." God is with you wherever you are. But we don't feel that, so if my husband goes and has an affair, I feel destroyed. Why? My source of happiness, my source of joy, my source of strength did not divorce me or did not have an affair. He's still there. He did not go on an early retirement. He's still there. He's still God. He's always going to be God. So what happened? Why did I get so devastated? I mean, it's understandable to feel pain, but when you feel this extreme emotion where life is just no longer worth living, that's a big hint that
Yeah.
something is off track.
Will you repeat the what the prophet has said about worshiping false gods?
False gods? I mean, well, so the reason why we had this discussion, Chris, was
Hmm.
as a Muslim, we're not allowed to worship anyone but God. That's called shirk. So
Yeah.
nothing, you're not allowed to worship anyone but God. And that's the prerequisite of being a Muslim. That's the first requirement. So the discussion you and I were having was that I like to be inflammatory and I'll say stuff. But hey, it's my job to make people think. So I was talking to a group of Muslims and I said, yeah, but we all do shirk all the time. And just because we're born in Muslim households, we think, oh, this number one prerequisite, that's done. I can take this one because I was born a Muslim, and of course I don't worship anyone but Allah. Yeah, but look at what worship means. Worship is ilah. We say la ilaha. Ilah is someone who created you, and someone who, the only one who deserves to be worshipped, the one who's worthy of worship. Worship means you ask. He's the source of your needs and desires to be fulfilled. That's why you worship, right? You worship
Yes.
as your God, but you also call that God the source that fulfills all your needs and desires. But here we're chasing happiness through an ideal mate or through a career. We take bribes because we think that's going to make us happy. We want to, live in a certain house or whatever it is, or a degree. Or if we fail in an exam, we're lost, like, oh my God, my life is over because I didn't get this degree. So we're making those things or those people the sources of our happiness and our strength, which was only supposed to be Allah. Therefore, it is one of those hidden forms of shirk. Therefore, I called it a false god. And you said, well, I have a problem with the term false god. And I said, well, it's attachment. All attachments are false gods, and they
That's
all
right.
lead to weaknesses. That's why God doesn't want, it's not, when I was a kid, it used to bug me because I was like, God says he doesn't like pride. He doesn't want anyone to be prideful. And yet he says, no one, only I deserve to be worshiped. Well, that was a young kid thinking that way. Now, the older Eram knows that, yes, only God is worthy of worship, because when you become that slave who is completely submitted to God's will, that is strength. Nothing
That's
can
right.
shake you. But
That's
the
right.
moment you start attaching your strength and your happiness to any false God, you have suddenly made yourself weak. Now you are open to misery
Yeah.
or, unhappiness,
Suffering. Yeah. See,
suffering. Yeah.
so we mentioned this earlier in the conversation. I want to come back to it, that growth happens. Growth means to become more and more aligned with the will of Allah, with the will of God.
Mhm.
Growth happens when one can stand in the fire of their own discomfort. I want to make a comment, if I may, Eram, about this in the context of marriages, because the great thing about arranged marriages is there's a recognition on some level from this ancient tradition. There's a recognition that any partner can help you come to God.
Yes, I
Any
agree.
any partner can help you come to God. So the this, however, having said that, there are some paths which are smoother, easier, more comfortable than others. And if we talk about marriages and what makes for happy marriages, fulfilled marriages, I would suggest that the most important thing, which we mentioned at the beginning, which is your compatibility with that person. Because one of the things you mentioned, Janet, who is my ex-wife. Janet is an amazing woman. As you
She
know, you've
is.
met her.
I love
She's
her. Yes.
absolutely incredible woman. And yet, what made Janet and my relationship difficult is because we love each other deeply, dearly. We still love each other as friends. That's why she's the godmother of my children. But Janet and I and we shared common values. However, there were certain elements where we each had challenges, internal challenges that her challenge and my challenge would bump up against each other, and then they became extremely painful.
Mm.
And and we can have that kind of relationship where one person's pain it reflects the other person's pain, and then it becomes multiplied. It becomes so painful. Now, it's still true that if you can stand in the fire of that pain, of that discomfort, then your growth will be phenomenal. But sometimes it's so painful that it's unbearable. And so one has to judge, how much of my discomfort can I stand in order
Yes.
to grow. And it's possible. This is why this aspect of compatibility, that when one person's pain is another person's when the one spouse's challenge. So let's say the wife's challenge is with jealousy, and the husband's challenge is with finances. Okay, but the wife, for whatever reason, is comfortable with finances. She knows that finances are always coming, that God always provides, Allah always provides. She doesn't have an issue around finances. And so when he goes through ups and downs of his financial life, be it for
Mhm.
whatever, whether his fault or not, she's like this. She's stable, right?
Yeah.
When the husband is that when the wife, he's committed and he has no issues of going off and being with someone else. That's not his issue. That's not his challenge, right? Her
Mhm.
challenge is jealousy. And so she sees him talking with a friend, talking with a woman, having a business conversation with some woman, and she gets jealous. But if that's not his pain, then he can be there as an anchor for her, helping her to know that he is committed to her, that he's not going anywhere, that there's nothing for her to be jealous about. So I don't know if I'm being clear enough in this explanation, but
No, I'm understanding it.
if if the man's pain is I need to go off and I need to have as many relationships as possible, and the woman's issue is jealousy, then their thing is going to run up against each other in such a major way that it's going to be extremely painful. But if the
Yeah.
man doesn't have the issue of running off with being with other people, other partners, and he's just stable in his relationship, the woman may see part things, see him doing things that make her jealous, right and left, but he's stable in that. And likewise, she has no issues around finances. She feels comfortable about finances. He can go through his ups and downs. So all I'm trying to say is that what can make a relationship easier is when the things that make you go off the rails, is that an expression that would be understood in Pakistan? If you have an experience, if you have certain issues in your life that cause you, and that that's going to cause you again and again to just really go out of your mind, then ideally you want to find a partner or have a partner who that's not an issue for them,
Yeah.
that they can be your anchor, your stability in that. And and I know you know this experience, Eram, because I know that you've had relationships where you've had a partner who, even while you were going through a lot of ups and downs, is able to be stable, is able to be strong, is able to be open and listen, and to hear what you have to say. And that's uh, the so I'm hopeful that you can somehow clarify what I've just said.
See,
But
that's the thing with Chris, that we had agreed that we were not going to go into very philosophical, deeply thought-provoking topics today, but then we sometimes veer into those. And yes, the level of our audience right now may not be there. Maybe a handful of people might be able to understand some of these deeper concepts. My goal is to educate you guys enough to where in a few months you're going to be able to understand this stuff and not go, huh? What did he just say? Um, and I also want to say I've been watching some of the comments. I'm going to encourage you guys to send your questions now. Um, First of all, I don't have the time. I don't have my beloved assistant daughter today watching the comments, so they're not being deleted. I just want to say to you guys, this, I've been very clear from the beginning. My job is to be this, what do you call it? The lightning rod of truth.
mhm.
And truth is going to be very uncomfortable for many people, you guys. So there are people that are going to make all kinds of silly comments. They always do from day one. So some people are trying to defend me, and they're getting kind of distracted right now. Just ignore those people, you guys. It's okay. I don't need anybody's approval. My job is actually to make people uncomfortable and make them think. Make them think. That's my job. So it's okay. Some people are going to get so uncomfortable that they're going to become rude. And it's not because, I mean, it looks like they're attacking me, but really what's happening is that something I said or something Chris said is attacking their belief system, and
Yeah.
they're very protective of that belief system, the reality as they know it, because that's what the ego wants. It wants the comfort of knowing and of being right, and therefore they protect that very viciously. And when that gets attacked, or when that gets challenged, then they will attack the person who's challenging it. um, it's just everybody's
But
on
but
their
this is
level
a
of
great example of what I was just talking about, because in a sense, if you look at your relationship, Eram, to the people who are chatting here, as a kind of I know it's not a marriage, but it's a relationship. And
Mhm.
what you just said
Oh
is
my God, yes, that proves that point. Yes.
okay. What you just said is that it's okay if people don't approve of what you're saying. It doesn't
Yes.
disturb your happiness. It doesn't disturb your inner balance. And that's the point I was trying to make. If you're married
Yes.
to someone like that in the areas which are challenging for you, then you're going to have a marriage which is easy and smooth and comfortable, you know? If you
But if
if
you're married to someone who's constantly being challenged and then they attack you and then there's drama and then there's all that stuff, Chris.
then it's going to be
And this is
difficult.
another important point I wanted to cover, because let's say you are someone who doesn't have a lot of inner things going on and they're pretty clear and they're stable and in other words, they're more emotionally intelligent. This is, by the way, a sign of emotional intelligence. The more intelligent you become emotionally, the less things bother you, whether it's other people's
Right.
opinions of you or stuff happening around you. So let's say you're a more emotionally intelligent person, but the person that got chosen for you is not. They're kind of nuts. They get bothered about everything and they want to control you, because by controlling you, they think that they can feel more safe and secure. Can we fix that person?
Can we fix
My
anyone?
favorite question.
There's only
No, you
one
can.
there's only one person we can ever fix,
There's
and
no
that's not even true. You know,
Yeah,
I
that's
spent
not
a lot of I
true.
spent a lot of my life, Iram, as you may remember, I spent a lot of my life thinking that if something wasn't going right in my life, it meant because I was doing something wrong and I needed to fix myself, you know? And the truth is that we can never fix anyone else, nor can we fix ourselves. What we can do is we can open up to accept that the play of life in us and in others is the expression of God's will. And when we the thing that causes suffering is our resistance to the expression of God's will. Have you ever noticed, Aram, that have you ever noticed that if God wants something to happen, it's going to happen whether you want it or not?
Yes. Of course.
Yeah. The fact is you have a choice. You can either push back against that thing that is coming at you and try and
So you're
resist
pushing
it.
back against
In
God?
which case,
Yeah.
yeah, when you push back against it, you're going to get smashed, you know. Or when it comes, you can flow with it. You can move with it, and instead of getting smashed, you ride the wave, you know, and then it becomes fun. This is why surfing is so popular among people who live by beaches and oceans. Is because surfing, when you can surf the waves of the ups and downs of life, then life becomes fulfilling. It becomes joyful. But what prevents us from surfing those waves is our resistance. If there's one thing that keeps us out of God's will, it's when we resist, when we try and fight back, when we try and make the world conform to what I think it should be. Hmm?
So that was great. Thank you. I want to ask you, so for some of our listeners that are in marriages that are good or okay but can be improved, there
Hmm.
is a technique that you have always shared with me which works wonders, which is the appreciation game.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
You want to talk about that? Because I think if
Sure.
people could start doing that within a week they would see a lot of improvement in their
Yes, yes,
marriage.
yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the tools and techniques that my wife and I use anytime when we start to feel like we're not feeling as connected. And by the way, for anyone who's in a relationship and you notice that sometimes you feel really close to your partner, sometimes you feel not at all close to your partner, I think it's really important to recognize that this is natural. Life
Hmm.
goes in waves, okay? And relationship go in waves as well. Eram has heard me talk many, many times about the fact that life is a movement between expansion and contraction, between when we feel excited and happy and love, connected to our partner, and times when we don't, when we feel shut down, we feel disconnected, we feel withdrawn. This is contraction, expansion, we're in love. Contraction, we feel alone, we feel abandoned, we feel lost, right? And all relationships, the best relationship in the world, I consider that my relationship with my wife is among the best relationships that I've ever had in my life, anything that I've ever seen anywhere in anyone's life.
I
And yet it,
agree. I've
it
seen
goes
it.
through its ups and downs just like life does. And so if you want to have a great relationship, lots of times what we forget, because the mind tends to focus on what we don't like, right? For most people.
Mhm.
And there's a principle, Eram, that you may recall that I teach, which is that what you put your attention grows stronger in your life. What you
Yes,
give
always.
attention to becomes stronger. And when we are feeling dissatisfied, we're giving attention to the things that are making us unhappy. And so the appreciation game is a simple technique, a simple way of reminding ourselves of what we love and appreciate about the partner that we're with. And in this case, the way I love to play it and the way my wife Doe and I play it is that we take turns. And I say something that I appreciate about her. She says something that she appreciates about me. And not only what we appreciate, but why we appreciate that thing. And this is a really important piece because it's one thing for I can say, Iram, I can say to you, now you're frozen. I wonder if you can still hear me. Yes?
I
Yeah.
can hear you. I
Okay.
can hear you.
I can say to you, Iram, I love that you are so honest.
Hmm.
Okay.
I will say thank you.
Yeah. And that has some value. I love to, obviously, uh, we love to be appreciated for if we value honesty. That's a great thing to be appreciated. But if I say, Iram, I love how honest you are because it allows me to know that I can trust you.
Hmm.
I love that you are honest because it allows me to feel secure in our relationship because I know that you are not trying to 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 mislead me in some way or other. I know that I can trust you and our relationship, and that if there is something that needs attention, you will tell me. You know?
Hmm.
So when I say why I appreciate that you're honest, it adds a depth to that
Yes.
appreciation. Okay. And then oftentimes it makes it easier to take it in because if someone says I'm honest, or they say, I really love you because you're beautiful. I mean, that may seem very superficial. Yeah, so who cares? I love you because I love that you're so beautiful because it makes me feel so attracted to you, and I want to be closer to you. I'm talking to my wife right now, not to you, Aaron. I,
I got
I,
that.
it makes me want to be more intimate with you, and I love being intimate. I love being able to see your beauty and to appreciate it, both inner and outer. So the appreciation game of just taking turns appreciating each other, if you're in a relationship that just needs to be picked up a bit, it's a great way of bringing us
And I
back
want to
to that.
remind everyone that this is where what you call ATV and I call bad, you got to apply that even in this appreciation game, which is authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability, which you saw Chris implementing all of these when he was talking about the compliment. So you have to be honest. It has to be an authentic compliment.
That's
And
right.
then when you're telling them the why, that's when you're going to hit on some vulnerability for yourself, because you're really expressing yourself with authentic, expression. And when you become vulnerable, something magical happens.
That's
That
right.
is when intimacy comes in.
That's
That
right.
is when the other person also begins to feel vulnerable. Without vulnerability, there is no intimacy, therefore there is no real bond. I really, really challenge you guys to try this exercise. It has done wonders, because I guarantee you there are going to be couples, because when I was working with couples in Pakistan a couple of years ago, and I would give them this exercise, there would be tears. The very first
Mm.
night that they tried it, there were real
Yes.
tears, because they had never, and it wasn't just the women that cried, it was the husbands too,
Yes.
because they had never been appreciated that way. I mean,
Yes.
people think, oh, I love you, I appreciate
Right.
you. But no, we
That's right.
don't. We need to
Yeah.
be told.
That's
So
right.
when the husband was told that, I love you, or I appreciate how hard you work for us, because you bring, you never let me suffer, or the way you take care of the children, or whatever it is. Oh my God, this is one of the key secrets I'm going to tell you all ladies right now. Men, especially Pakistani men, yearn for appreciation because they never get it. It's
Yeah.
just not a part of our culture. So please do not undermine the power of this technique, because it's very powerful. Do the, 5 things or 3 things, for try it on a weekend. 5 things you do, 5 things on their list. Do not leave the room until you both do your 5 things, even if there are tears, whatever it is. And then and do it the next weekend, and then try it for at least a month. It's going to do wonders. Because somebody was asking that question, is it possible to um, still be exciting and attractive even after 15, 20 years of marriage?
Yeah.
Especially, there are so many attractive women, and your husband could be attracted elsewhere. And here's a very interesting thing, and you could of course correct me, because you're the man here, I'm the woman, and I'm speaking for men here. But if all other things being normal and average, typical men that love their wives, a man can get attracted to the opposite sex. Of course, that's natural, but whether he acts on it or not is a very different thing. So not all men are going to go have affairs simply because now you're in your 40s or 50s or whatever, and there are younger women out there, because of this thing called intimacy. I mean, the bond is so valuable,
That's right.
and it's so joyous. There's so, there's such juiciness in that you don't necessarily have to go throw that with an empty relationship or a one night stand. A lot of men that are average, and I'm not even saying good men, a lot of average, normal, sane men are not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really true. If a man is authentically appreciated, loved, cared about, when he hears and he feels valued, then that's a very strong attraction.
Yes.
It's a very strong attraction. And I want to tell a little story, if I may, Iram,
I
because
want to just make one comment, because this
okay,
is, I love this comment by Farial. She said, this work is for those who want deep work and not quick fixes. Yay, that is so cool. Yeah, you got it. And
that's
there
right.
are no quick fixes anyway. Just like quick fixes work, it's a band aid, it's going to come off tomorrow anyway. If you really want to fix your marriage, there is no other option but to do deep work. Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Well, and you think about it, I mean, marriage ideally is a lifetime enterprise, right? And so it got to involve deep work. If it's the primary tool for growth that Allah has given to us, then uh, it, it's got to involve deep work. But the story I wanted to tell was when Janet and I were writing the Passion Test, this book that we wrote. Um, One of our friends came, and she was in a relationship with a man she loved deeply and dearly. But she talked to Janet at the time, and she said, I really love this man. I would love to marry him, except for one thing, is I'm really worried about his attitude toward finances. He does things which scare me, and I don't know how to handle it. And then she went off. We hadn't learned the lesson I'm about to share with you yet at this point. So she went off, and Janet didn't see her until about 6 months later. She got a wedding invitation to their wedding, and then she connected with her friend. Lotus was her name, and she said, "Lotus, what happened? I thought you were worried about this thing with Stan, her man." And she said, Lotus said, "Well, it's an amazing thing because I decided, because I knew this principle, I knew that what I put my attention on grows stronger. And so I decided that I was only going to give attention to the things when my man, when he started doing things that made me feel secure, that made me feel comfortable about his money, then I praised him. I really appreciated those things. And when he did things that scared me, when he did things that made me feel uncomfortable about money, instead, I used to get angry at him, but I decided to stop that. And I just didn't say anything. I didn't give any attention to it whatsoever. If he did something that I thought, oh my God, what's he doing? He's crazy. We're going to lose all of the money that we have. Oh my God. I just shut up. I closed my
Mm-hmm.
lips. And then Janet's friend Lotus said, it's an amazing transformation that has happened. Because as I've appreciated the things that make me feel comfortable and secure and let him know how good that makes me feel when he does those things, he's been doing more and more and more and more of that. And that's why I agreed to marry him, because I feel completely comfortable with him now because he doesn't do those things that scared me
Beautiful.
so much before. It's really true. And
Thank you.
when you get mad at your partner, when you get angry at your partner for doing something that scares you, something that you think is really stupid, what you're doing is you're giving attention to what you don't want. And
Yes,
what you give attention to will grow stronger in your relationship.
always.
Okay?
And I've go ahead, Chris.
No,
Were
no,
you finished?
go. I'm finished enough.
And I just finished my 30-day transformation course yesterday with 11 women, and that's kind of what I kept harping on again and again, that there is when you think in a certain way, what Chris says is very true. Energetically, we know that what you give your attention to grows in your life, because focus, even Islam talks about it, that niyat, amal ka daro madar niyat pe hai. Niyat is very important. Niyat is intention. That's the focus of your energy. It's a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah.
But if we don't talk about it from the energy perspective, let's talk about it from a physiological perspective. When your brain is constantly thinking in a certain pattern, it's going to build neural pathways, and this is called neuroplasticity. So when it builds those neural pathways, then all your thoughts are going to, in a millisecond, when your husband has probably just picked up his wallet, and if you think he's going to waste money, in a millisecond you're going to go in that direction, because that it's like zzz, 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 it's a very fast computer. But when you start giving attention to something else, that pathway, just like when you don't work out a muscle, after a while it's going to start dying, and it's going to go through atrophy. So the same thing is going to happen. Now that muscle is getting stronger, so that new neural pathway is being built.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to show up more, because you're going to notice things very differently. Your own reactions are going to be different. So interestingly, this 30 days transformation course that I led Pakistani women through, because it was a challenge for me. I wanted to see, can I teach these same things that I've been teaching in the West, and with a lot of success, can I teach these same concepts here?
Yeah.
And so they got into this course with me, and I said, well, I'm going to help transform your life. And I picked some of the most difficult cases where they had extreme anxiety, extreme depression, suicidal, very, very um, challenging circumstances in their lives. And they got into the course thinking she's probably going to give us some kind of a fix. And I told them, well, guess what? I'm going to help to change you. The only person we can help shift or transform is you. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to give you advice about what to do about your circumstances. You're going to change, though. So Alhamdulillah, in 2 weeks, they shifted a lot. In 30 days, it's completely transformed. And things around them have started to change because they changed. So their life started to change. It's so, it works every single time. We have
Yeah.
to work on ourselves. It's so important. And that's why, you guys, I'm doing these shows and I'm inviting speakers like my dear friend Chris. If you really understood today's talk, you will see everything he talked about is pretty much the same stuff that Aftab Uncle talks about. And it's really the same stuff. It's just uh, understanding it perhaps from a different perspective, but it's really the same thing. We're all talking about the same thing. And I've been so
Yeah.
blessed that I've had the best mentors in the world. That there was you, Chris, and then there was Aftab Uncle, and I kept getting them like, oh my God, they both say the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why you wanted to even meet him. So
Well,
I
and
wanted
what?
to summarize
Go
just
ahead. I'm
very
sorry.
quickly. I just want to let our viewers understand there are two techniques we shared with you guys today, because I deliberately kept the title of this talk, How to Fix Your Marriage, because I know a lot of people were going to be like, oh, yes, good. She's going to give us some kind of a quick fix pill. No, sorry. But this is how you can fix your marriage, and you can technically fix everything, because isn't everything a relationship? It's the relationship with your elders, with your loved ones, with your relatives, with your children, with your in-laws, with God, with yourself. Everything is a relationship. And these principles apply everywhere. So we're going to do these, we're going to continue these talks, and we will share some practical tips like what Chris shared today. One was ATV, which is authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. And then the appreciation game: appreciate your partner, have them appreciate you. And then there was another one we did. Oh yeah, blame. Do not blame. Whenever, if you want to influence the behavior of your partner or someone else, especially children, then pay attention to, or give attention to, and give appreciation to the behavior that you do want, so that they get encouraged, and quit criticizing and blaming. And that's going to help to hopefully move them away from that.
Well,
You
the
want to
thing,
add something more?
I know we probably don't have much time left, but I just want to share one thing. You know, if anyone who's listening has ever been in a relationship where you fell in love, where you just fell for someone big time, then you know that in the beginning, all you can see of that person is all their great points.
That's
All you
wonderful.
perceive is
Yeah.
they are just the best, most wonderful person that you've ever met in your entire life, and they can do no wrong. And all that's happening in that, and that usually lasts about 3 months, right? All that's happening during that time is your awareness, your attention is going to what you love and appreciate in that person. And
Yes.
then as you become comfortable with them, then you begin to see things that you don't appreciate as much, right? That and then you start to criticize, because they're starting to reflect to you things you don't like in yourself, or reflect things that you have judgments about. And so over time, your attention, your awareness goes from all the things that you love about them, all the things that make them great, to all the things you hate about them, all the things that you can't stand about them. So is it any surprise that relationships go like this over time? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's all a function of where are you putting your attention.
Yes.
So the simple, I mean, it's not a technique, but if you want to fix your marriage, the quickest, easiest, most direct route is start looking for the things in your spouse that you love and appreciate, that you value, that and then give them that feedback for the things that of what you appreciate and why. That and you don't have to play the appreciation game. Do it on a day when you see them doing something that makes you feel good. Let them know. You want to
Yeah.
fix your marriage? It'll transform
Yes,
overnight.
the recording will be available. I think as soon as we end the Facebook Live, it's going to become available, and we're going to put this up on YouTube. And so I know some of the comments are just funny. They're just distracting. That's why I kept looking here, because I wanted to pick
I
some
understand.
questions. And the thing is that there were so many comments, and I hate to say useless comments that I couldn't find the questions. So
Oh,
next time, I just want to let everybody know that we will have someone moderating the feed so that people that disturb the talk and that are distracting for other people are going to be banned from the talks, because that's not why we're doing this. And unfortunately, this is tough love. This is boundaries.
yeah.
I love you, but I love myself too, and I'm going implement these boundaries because I don't want anybody's time to be wasted. Chris, this has been so wonderful. So we're going to continue to talk, you guys. We're going to cover some more important topics. If you want to send me your questions, inbox me with those, and I'll see if those can be picked for questions from Chris next time. We are going to talk about how to have difficult discussions and communication issues. He's a master at communicating. I have everything I have learned about communicating is from Chris. It's been amazing. And so we'll talk about that. That'll be a really fun talk. And then of course, more stuff. We'll dig further into why blame and criticism is so critically it needs to be removed from your relationship, what it actually does to the person when you're doing it, and how I can tell you I have seen that the most damage over time, where a relationship had love, it had a bond, it had all those things, and what eroded it, even though neither partner cheated, they didn't stray from their marriage, but the constant blame and criticism actually destroyed it, poisoned the relationship. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff. Thank you, Chris. Much love to
Thank you,
Joe
Eram.
and everybody else, and to you, of course. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.